Hey Sham, how's it going?
Going good, Pranav. How's
It's
it
been
going?
good. I'm wrestling with a question. Do you think we should have like a music to our podcast? Because currently we don't. Currently we just start with me and you talking about things. So do you think we should have a music?
Yeah, but what sort of music are you thinking of? Like our interaction, if there's a genre that could define it, what are you
Ah,
thinking?
um, I think something really intense because that's the kind of individuals we are. I wouldn't call ourselves call you and me entertainers. I wouldn't call you and me people who are goofing around and having cracking jokes. We are these two intense people who want to have who want to make even the simplest of things really really intense. That's how I look at you and me. So probably like a suspense
Right, right.
thriller music track.
Like, I mean, since we're not goofing around, so what you mean is something like a
Hmm.
Hans Zimmer type,
Probably, yeah.
you know? That's great, yeah. I love how we started this episode on a note which is like totally not goofing around and
Very intense.
very intense. Yeah, I like that.
Cool. So yeah, again, someone who is really bad at getting into segues. I think I'll just jump into the topic right away. So what we want to talk about today is the habits of a storyteller, or the 5 habits of an impactful storyteller. And I think both of us, I mean, I'll speak for myself for a bit. We have on and off, we have these people in our life whom we really, really admire. They could be, people in the business world, in the marketing world, or in some cases even in the fiction world, or maybe screenwriters or fiction authors and people like that whom we really admire. And when we look at them, we just have this feeling that wow, this guy or this girl is such a brilliant storyteller, such a brilliant story creator. I would never ever 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 be able to reach that level of storytelling. And I think it's very very natural to feel that. It's very very natural to have that fear of feeling inadequate, of feeling insufficient. But I think what I'm learning is that, and I think this has been the case since the last, I don't know, 3 to 4 years. What I've been learning is that storytellers are not born; they are created. So they really really work on this craft. They hone their skills, and at some point of time, they reach this threshold, which categorizes them, officially categorizes them as amazing storytellers or impactful storytellers. And so it's a process. It's not something that you're born with. It's not a talent. It's a skill that you develop. And I think you and I, we can develop that skill. We can practice that skill. So with that in mind, I just thought of coming up with these 5 tips that I have observed in master storytellers. And yeah, just creating an episode of that with an intention of helping others become impactful storytellers as well.
Great, that's really exciting. And I just want to set a bit of context for the listeners. Personally, I feel extremely inadequate as a storyteller. Um, I have never actually had experience also yet where I have put out content on a consistent basis. So my business is at a stage where, like, it has just started. I get people from word of mouth, and I don't publish consistently. I publish, but I don't publish stuff consistently, right? Uh, so because of which, I've never had to play my storytelling card or put my storytelling skills on display a lot. And even naturally, I think even before, say, I got into marketing or anything, from when I was younger, like in my 20s and all, I just had this mental blocks around storytelling. Now, I would see these people like in parties and all who would like capture everyone's attention and be telling some like really funny anecdote or some story that happened to them, and I would not be able to focus on the story because I'd be thinking, oh my god, I could never do this. Like I'd be looking around at everybody else. they'd be saying an amazing story, and they'd be capturing everyone's attention. And what I'd be thinking is that I cannot do this, right? So I still haven't moved on very much from that. From those mental blocks. So in a sense, I am a noob, and like this podcast episode is also about me learning from you, since you have a lot more experience with stories and developing this as a skill. Unlike our previous episodes here, I am looking at myself as a noob and looking to you to understand like how you're looking at the skill differently, and what you're doing different to both get over these mental blocks as well as to improve the
Sure,
skill.
that doesn't put
both.
any pressure on me whatsoever. So yeah, for sure. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I will jump into the first tip, which is I think a simple word to capture the first point that I want to make is just collect and capture stories around you. Or to put it in a better English, master storytellers are great at capturing ideas which are already existing around them. So they basically take inspiration from things that are already around them. So for example, if you go to Starbucks, for example, if you go to a coffee shop and you see something interesting, you make a note of it. You read an interesting email, you make a note of it. You see something interesting on the television, you make a note of it. You have an interesting conversation, you make a note of it. I have personally started carrying this, small pocket diary, which, whenever I go out along with my keys, my headphones, my mask, I carry my diary and a pen, so that if at all I come across a thought which I don't want to lose or which I don't want to forget later, I make a note of it. Because quite often, we feel that if that thought is actually good enough, we will remember it, or that thought, if it is compelling enough, we won't forget it. But that's not actually it doesn't work for me. I have to make a note of it, and then when I am in my writing space, I can take that thought in a blank document, just riff on it a little bit, and that becomes a story for me. So. Yeah, I think that's the first point. Taking inspiration from fiction writers is another, for example, where you could just, because fiction writers are brilliant at creating this tension, brilliant at creating this suspense. So that is one more inspiration. Then Netflix could be another inspiration for you to take, where you can take inspiration. So all of these are raw materials from where you can borrow the raw material needed for the storytelling. So the first quality of an impactful storyteller is that he is observant and he's always collecting ideas.
Okay, so I have a question here and an observation too. Maybe I'll start with the observation. So I think this is something very similar to what even stand-up comedians do. I think I've heard a lot. If I remember right, Seinfeld also keeps a journal with him. Right, yeah. So even I do that for ideas specifically. So that will lead into my question. Is there any difference between noting down ideas that come and noting down the raw materials for a story, and how would they look different? Because right now I keep a WhatsApp group. I don't keep a pen and paper journal. I like to keep things digital. So I have a WhatsApp group in which I'm the only person in there. And whenever I get ideas, I put it in there. I feed it in there. Whenever I get a good idea of the way something is phrased, an idea is phrased, or the way something can be presented, or it might be a path-breaking idea altogether of doing something, etc. Never really thought about stories much. So do the raw materials of a story look different from what I'm currently doing?
I'm not entirely sure if I understood you, but let me still try attempting an answer, and you let me know if I'm on the right track or not. What I mean to say is that there will be, so when you are creating content, let's say you're writing an emailer for your list, and let's say the theme of that email, I'll take a fitness example. Let's say um, the theme of that emailer, let's say, is something like how to eat during a festival, or let's say how to eat during a Diwali festival, right? So perhaps the main message that you want to give in that particular email is that, hey, it's Diwali, and here I'm borrowing your fondness of flexible dieting. So I'll just say that, hey, it's Diwali, it's a tradition, so don't worry, don't judge yourself. Like, you can go to your relative's place and you can have that different food that they are serving. It's okay. Just ensure that you track those, and just ensure that when you come back, you have an idea about what you had, and just make either a mental note or a digital note, or whatever you tell your clients to do. Okay. Now, to make this point, one way of making this point is telling it to the subscribers. But the other way of doing it could be that, hey, again, I'm thinking from top of my head, but if you had a story which was entirely different from, let's say, the world of fitness, maybe it was a childhood incident that you had, or maybe it was someone winning a Nobel Prize about something, totally wild in a totally different area of life. But it sort of, leads to the same moral, which is that, hey, if you, there is no need to judge yourself, just calculate and you'll be fine. If that other story has the same moral, you can use that as an entry into your emailer and then make up your point, as opposed to just saying that, hey, they do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And so when we collect those raw materials, maybe the first 10 stories you can't use at all, maybe the 11th one finds a way into your email list, and maybe after, I don't know, maybe after 3 months you write an emailer where a story number 6 finds its way into your email list. So that's what I mean when I say collect ideas or collect stories, because you can use these anecdotes in the content that you are creating. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was really helpful. I think what really worked for me was I understood what raw materials of a story meant. So, just to paraphrase you here, any anecdotes, any events that happened, or if you're looking at fiction, then it could be those fictional stories which ultimately can be connected to your same underlying message that you would have said. So, in the absence of a story, you might have said that, hey, it is a festival. You need if you follow flexible dieting, you can have your cake and eat it too, to put a
Sure.
very food related metaphor there. But basically you can indulge and still be on track on your fitness goals. That's the message I want to send. But if I can connect any real life anecdotes, any anecdotes that I've observed happening to others or happening to myself, anything in the past, any event, or any fictional story, fictional part of a story, a particular scene might be an entire story. All of these could be potential raw material.
Yes.
If it connects with the message.
Exactly.
That's what I've understood, right? Great. Yeah. That sounds good. Pretty helpful.
Cool. So the second habit is that, and I'm going to use he, okay, but this applies for both, obviously. But in with respect to feminism, I just want to say that I'm using the pronoun he just for the sake of simplicity. So a good storyteller shows with specificity. So I'm going to say that again. He shows with specificity. And I think the two keywords here are he shows. So shows is one of the keywords, and specificity is another keyword. So let me give you an example. So one way of telling a story would be, I sat at the coffee shop and I was clearly confused about what to write. The deadline was making me anxious. Okay, I'll say it again. I sat at the coffee shop and I was clearly confused about what to write. The deadline was making me anxious. But another way of telling the same story is, I was sitting at the Starbucks round a corner, frowning and staring intently at the screen, continuously tapping my right leg out of nervousness. The deadline was near and I had made no progress. Okay, I'll repeat this one again because this is a long sentence. I was sitting at the Starbucks round the corner, frowning and staring intently at the screen, continuously tapping my right leg out of nervousness. The deadline was near and I had made no progress. Now, if you compare both of these statements, in the first statement I said I sat at the coffee shop. In the second statement I said Starbucks. Right? So rather than saying any coffee shop, when you say Starbucks, it just paints. It's just like a simple switch in a word, just changes the impact that the listener or the reader has. Because there's somehow a world of difference when I say Starbucks versus a coffee shop, because Starbucks makes it more real, makes it more vivid. That is one. That is the one major difference. And secondly, what I'm trying to do in the second statement is that I'm trying to show, rather than saying, rather than telling something. So one of the principles is show, don't tell, right? Rather than, saying or telling someone that, hey, or telling the reader that John was angry, you say that John banged the door furiously. Because that particular element helps the reader visualize the whole situation, understand it a lot better. And basically the reader does not want to be spoon-fed. He wants to work for to understand the story better. So when you show them with specificity, when you give them specifics, when you help them clearly paint a picture in their mind, and also when you show it to them, when you don't tell them facts but show how the story is unfolding, it creates a much, much better impact as opposed to the other way. Was that complicated, Shyam?
No, that was very useful. The example highlighted it very well. My question to you is, how can somebody who's used to telling and not showing, or somebody who is more used to talking in abstracts, right? How can somebody like that get more comfortable with one being more specific and two showing as opposed to telling?
So here is what I would suggest. It's a practice. Okay, so let's say when you are done writing your article, or when you are whatever. Let's take an example of an article. A written word. So when you're done with that, what you could do is just run a sweep. Just sweep through that article and see if there are any sentences, any words, any phrases which you can make more specific. And I find myself talking about principles and in abstracts all the time. So you would always find me writing sentences like, when I am in a stressful situation, what I usually try to do is I try to look at my fear. I would use a sentence like this, right? But let's say, and it's okay to write this sentence, but when I come back to editing this particular sentence, what I will say is that, okay, so if I'm talking about fear, can I use an example? What kind of a situation makes me afraid? Okay, so for example, I could use this other thing that happened to me the other day when I was stopped by a policeman, when I was traveling from this place to that place. Because the moment the police stopped me for their regulation checkup that they do for all the vehicles, I felt my heart beating. Right, so now that is a much better insight into my fear as opposed to just telling about fear as a concept in general. So you do a sweep, you find how you can make that one specific thing much more concrete, and how you can make this thing that you are telling and convert it into showing.
So I think this is a great point to ask one question which in general bothers me about storytelling, that as somebody inexperienced, which is, what if you're taking a story from your own past or something you've observed, but frankly you don't remember too much of the vivid details or the specific details. right? Suppose, say, I remember something from 10 years ago, which I realize like fits my message very well. So I want to talk about that story. But I do not remember if my heart was beating hard, or I don't remember whether I was sitting in a Starbucks or a CCD, and I don't remember what I was wearing, or like anything very visual about the scene. Now I know that good storytelling dictates that if you can show, so if you can paint a nice picture, right, with your text or with your story or whatever, if you can paint a good picture, that helps the audience kind of immerse themselves in the world of the story, right? But I myself don't remember mine. So is it better to make up details so that I can create a nice visual picture? Or is it better to stick with only what I remember so that I can feel more authentic, or I can be more authentic? And
Right.
basically, should I make
we
up
have spoken
details
about
if I
this,
don't remember them?
offline. So I think I know where this question is coming from.
Yeah.
I feel that you might be over estimating the number of times this may happen to you, or in other words, this doesn't happen to me personally too frequently, where I feel like I have to make up stuff. And again, like, this is a very subjective area in terms of figuring out your own own ethical boundaries, because there is no right or wrong answer. You may say that you are sitting at Starbucks, but in reality you may have not been. You may have been sitting at Cafe Coffee Day, but you changing that particular detail does not really harm the audience in any way. And so you may just decide to go ahead with it for some reason. So you get to decide that. Maybe someone in your place would feel extremely inauthentic and uncomfortable with that, even with that small detail, and would want to change it to Cafe Coffee Day only. So I mean, that's my 2-part perhaps cop out answer, that it is subjective, but it doesn't arise as much as you think, as it does. Or maybe you could just say, I was sitting at Starbucks, and then maybe add a punch to that by saying, or at least that's what I remember. You could add a sentence after that, just to keep your authentic self as well, prevent your authentic self from becoming uncomfortable. So maybe you could add a few fixes to make sure that you are still within your ethical boundaries.
Got it. Yes. Ultimately, being authentic is a very personal experience as well. Different people would have different comfort levels when it comes to the amount of like how authentic they want to stick. Or I don't think that was phrased very well, but when it comes to, say, small things like, okay, was I sitting in a Starbucks, or do I, like, if I don't remember where exactly I was, does it matter if I say, okay, I was sitting in a Starbucks, versus just vaguely saying that I was sitting at a coffee shop? It probably depends on how comfortable I would feel asserting that I was sitting in a Starbucks, because in this case, it doesn't matter so much. So I guess for every such situation, there is probably a very personal sort of a line that we can draw. And of course, we have had this conversation before, but I thought it would be an interesting question to ask again, because I've kind of struggled with this question for a while, but now I've made my peace with it. That it just depends
good
on the
point.
situation.
Thanks for bringing that up. The third point is,
So third point now?
he uses the art of creating tension. And I think this is something that I have struggled, kind of to grasp this concept, or even to practice this concept, because I used to feel that, when if I create tension, if I create suspense, if I open a particular loop, or if I don't give the answer to the user to the reader in the first sentence, then I'm being a bad person. That's what, I was subconsciously telling myself, until I realized that, we do want to, even as an audience, we do want to go through that tension. We do want to go through that struggle. If I had told you at the end that, if I told you, if you had not watched Matrix the movie Matrix, and if I had told you at the beginning that, hey, Neo is the one, and he realizes it towards the end, you wouldn't have enjoyed the movie at all. You wouldn't have, I don't know if that is grammatically correct, but you would have lost the interest in watching that particular movie, right? So audience in general, we as human beings want that tension. We crave for that tension. We crave for that suspense to be created. And the job of a good storyteller is to create that suspense, is to create that tension, is to hook them up with a good hook. You attract their attention with a good hook. You make them care enough about the character because they see themselves in that character, and you do create that tension, and ultimately that tension is resolved.
So, side note, I just loved that you took an example of spoiling the Matrix from you're spoiling a movie for me, and that would have ruined my experience. I totally agree. In fact, I like, as a side note, I'm somebody who hates spoilers. Like, I'd probably be if we drew a bell curve as to how much people are offended by spoilers, I'm in the top 1%. I've ended friendships. Yeah, I'm not joking here. I've ended friendships because they spoiled stuff and didn't take it seriously and all. So I think you described this whole point very beautifully, because even I have read about tension. We have spoken about tension, etc. I've read about tension from Seth Godin, and I've been thinking about this for a while. But I think something about the way you described it here was really helpful. And a thought that I had to add to what you said was that ultimately, as content creators and as creators, our job is not just to push information out there to our audience, right? As soon as you build even a little bit of experience being a creator, you understand this quite early on, that our job is not just to push information out there. It is to create transformation. It is to create transformation in our audience. It is to get our audience from place A to place B, like psychologically or even otherwise, in terms of results or whatever. But often it is in terms of the beliefs that they have, right? So it could be argued that this journey of having the tension and trying to resolve it, that journey they go through is critical to actually transform, to actually make that transformation successfully. That the tension is a critical part, that the effort needed to resolve the tension, the psychological effort needed to resolve the tension, and the process you go through, that the journey you go through, is a very important aspect of bridging that gap in transformation that you need from going from place A to place B.
Yeah,
so,
the thing is,
that was also interesting for us as creators.
If the journey was not important, what you and I could have done is just sent an email to my email list saying that, hey, these are the top 5 habits of a storyteller, as opposed to having this conversation. Because the hope and the dream here is that, this conversation that you and I are having, we are exploring a topic, and through our eyes or through our lens, we are taking the audience on a journey, which is a lot better, or which brings about a lot more transformation as compared to sending them an email with just 5 pointers that we are discussing anyway.
That's really profound. I think I do imagine that whenever you publish this, I will come back to this episode and start taking notes, Pranav. I mean, we've done a few episodes before also, but this is the one where I'll probably come back with a notepad.
Awesome, man. Probably the biggest compliment that I've got so far. So thank you.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, the fourth point is, I think, understanding. So I'll name it as listening and empathy. And the subtext here is that the story that we create is, typically for a creator business, for a creator who is, trying to build his 1,000 true fans, which is the premise of this podcast. His story is not for everyone. And we are not looking for a mass hit. We are not looking for a story which is evergreen or which is equally, transformative or equally appealing to everyone. The story might be ignored by 99.99% of the people, but that's okay, because the 0.01% of the people who are your 1,000 true fans, if your story sticks with them, if they are able to resonate with it, then your job is done. And so you have to then figure out, okay, if these are my 1,000 true fans, or if these are the 10,000 people that I'm targeting, what are their beliefs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What do they want? What do they desire? What are their dreams and what are their fears? Because ultimately the story that I create has got to be in line with those dreams and aspirations that they have, which is where listening and empathy comes into the picture. It's not so much about being this charismatic talker or being this guy who gets ideas in his head and then he can create a story. It's about sitting with the other person, understanding what he or she is going through, being empathetic, being a good listener, sorry, and then you sit with them and you come up with a story that would address a particular challenge.
Interesting. So, if I may just paraphrase this in terms of what this would translate to, right? A non-exhaustive list. But so that means that whatever message is behind our story should be something that our audience cares a lot about.
Yes.
Right? That's a very direct consequence of that, right? The message. Then whatever scenes we create or whatever conflict we create, so the conflict as well as probably the situation before that, all of those should be very relatable also, right? Got it. And of course, like the way the conflict is resolved could involve our product or whatever we're selling and our philosophies, etc.
To give you an example in fitness, I think I've used this before, right? So let's say someone, who is struggling with losing weight, he might struggle to go to the gym because he feels that when he enters the gym, all eyes will be upon him, and he won't be able to work out, or he'll just feel too awkward to work out in that gym. Now, this is something that your client may not tell you explicitly. I mean, someone might, but most of them will not. Most of them will just say that, hey, I'm just uncomfortable going to the gym, or they may even use another reason to avoid going to the gym. They might just complain about the cost of the gym, or they might complain about the time. But, you have to deploy your emotional intelligence, and you have to really, make a guess or make an assertion that, okay, maybe he's just avoiding to go to the gym because going to the gym makes him uncomfortable because he feels that, he's under scrutiny. So you make that assertion, and then you build a story, or you draft a marketing message or an emailer which addresses this fear directly or indirectly. But unless and until you know this fear, you cannot create an impactful story, because the story that you will create for a pro athlete who cares a lot more about winning is different than the story that you would create for an overweight person who just wants to maintain his status and who is really, really afraid of being judged, because those two are very, very different emotions.
Right. And just knowing these things with a lot of clarity is, you can say, arguably half the battle won when it comes to a story, because if that is not relatable, then the story, there's no chance for the story to be a hit anyway.
Which I think, is a great segue into the fifth point, because as you correctly said, this is a lot about practice. And so a good storyteller puts in a lot of practice. He is looking to get on the stage as much as he can. He's looking to write as much as he can. He's looking to, let's say, make Facebook lives, webinars, go and give conference talks, whatever the stage looks like. But he is very keen on putting himself out there, just like a stand-up comedian. So I'm sure you know this practice, that when a stand-up comedian is preparing his or her jokes, what they would probably do is that they will go to a local club, they will tell their jokes, and they'll figure out, okay, joke number 3 and 5 worked really well, joke number 2 and 4 really bombed, so I'm not using those. So they take that instant feedback and they get better, so that when they perform on a bigger stage, which is like 10 times or 100 times the strength of of a club, they have much better material. And so it's all about, it's not about like coming up with this perfect formula and then inserting your ingredients, or like having a recipe and like putting ingredients as per that recipe. It's not that. It's about just putting yourself out there every day. You should keep on practicing. Keep an eye on what's working, what's not working. Take feedback and keep on improving.
Great. So this is a question I had to, which I was saving for later, but I think it's the right time to ask this since we're talking about practice. Is that, like, I believe practice is best when you also know that you're improving, and there's that there's a good mechanism for feedback. So what you mentioned about stand-up comedians was perfect. I think, like, probably they start saying some jokes to their friends first. That gives a very initial level feedback. Then they go to open mics and local clubs, and they get more feedback from smaller audiences. Right? They would never be saying a joke for the first time in front of a big audience, right? Because they've got that got the feedback from smaller audiences. Could you share a storyteller's equivalent or creator's equivalent of what that would look like? How do we get those initial feedbacks where we like do these mini tests, whether our story is connecting or resonating, and how do we build on that?
So a few things come to mind. One is direct conversations with your customers. You just have to be mindful when you're having that conversation about the things that really light up the eyes of your customer or your prospect when you're talking to them, and eventually you'll see a pattern. Eventually, if you're very mindful, if you're paying attention, you will see, or you will observe that a few things that you have been saying, in the last 10 conversations that you had, let's say 6 of the people were really, really intrigued by what you said and wanted to know more about that. So, just talking to customers is a tactical advice that comes to my mind. The second tactical advice that comes to my mind is this habit of publishing daily. When you publish daily, when you publish an article daily, when you publish an email daily, which let's say goes out to 100, 200, 300 subscribers, you immediately get feedback, because there have been some emails of mine, or let's say most of the emails where I have been ignored, my content has been ignored. But then once in a while, I have an email where I get, 20 responses, which clearly is a sign that, okay, this seems to be working for them. So I think the advantage of a creator is that he gets infinite number of tries, or he gets to try infinite number of times. He gets to roll the dice as many times as he wants through his content. And every opportunity to roll that die is an opportunity for him to learn from, what. So he posted something out. What did he learn from that? So I think he has got infinite chances to do that, and he should be using those chances as much as he can.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it, I think. The practice, so we have infinite chances to practice, since creators do publish very regularly, and the feedback that we can gauge is the response that we get. There will be differences that we can notice. We'll have a standard baseline response, and suddenly for certain pieces of content, like it seems in your case, where you're getting a huge spike in response, and that gives you an idea that maybe this message is connecting, this situation struggle is connecting, etc. Like that.
And so, that is precisely why I wanted to keep the fifth point as practice, because, it may just seem that, all of this is like a recipe, and then when you start using it, you'll create amazing stories. That's not the truth, honestly. The honest truth is that the first few times you're going to be really bad, you're going to suck. but then the 50th time or the 100th time you publish something is going to, change someone, or it's going to give them a light bulb moment. And you can have all the 4 habits that I mentioned above, but if you don't have the 5th habit, the chances of you succeeding are very, very slim. Unless of course you are this gifted storyteller who, by default has this gift of, just captivating everyone's attention. But for all of the others, which I think are the majority, I think it's just about showing up every day and practicing, and that is a non-negotiable as far as I am concerned.
Yeah, sounds good, really helpful. And I think I have been treating stories as a recipe so far, so maybe I am going to rethink that. I literally have like a structure written down that I'm inserting things. That's why I'm doing it right now. But probably with some practice, I'll be moving away from that because it might seem a little rigid. It might not. The message might not flow as
Awesome. And I think to wrap up, I will just put one question to the audience. With something that they can ponder upon, which is, are you giving yourself enough chances, or are you giving yourself enough opportunities to tell stories? Because even a family gathering can be a platform for you to tell a story. Even you having a conversation with a friend can be a platform for you to tell a story. And even you giving a presentation to your office colleagues can be an opportunity for you to tell a story. So are you giving yourself enough chances, enough opportunities to tell a story, is a question that I'll leave you with, because you clearly know the benefits of doing it more often.
Yeah, great. I think one takeaway that I'm taking away from this episode is that some of my mental blocks, of course, they exist regarding storytelling, but it is very susceptible to change. Probably the more I publish, the more I put content out there, the more I actually practice, it is bound to change. That is one thing that I haven't done enough of. So, of course, it sounds very cliche, but basically practice is a route to change, to overcome those mental resistance, mental blocks, and to get over. I think the fallacy is that I think many of us get stuck in the initial stages because we feel that those blocks will never go away, and we see them as very permanent things. But the way you began, like in the beginning of the episode, you mentioned that even you do feel awkward, or you did feel awkward early on. You did feel many of the things that even are holding me back right now. But it is good to see your progression, that like with practice, you do not feel those same things in the same intensity anymore. So that is one big takeaway that I'm taking away, that with practice, and especially with something that resembles daily practice as much as possible, right? The more frequent the practice is, the more I can expect these inhibitions to slowly melt away, and
yeah, absolutely. I do think it's a daily practice. Even if you don't publish daily, you have to create daily. I mean, of course, if you publish daily, that's a separate conversation, and you know that I'm a fan of daily publishing. But yeah, especially in the beginning, it's not so much about maybe giving a Thursday to storytelling. It's more about maybe giving 45 minutes every day to hone this craft of storytelling, because it just beautifully complements or supplements all the other strengths that you have, and exponentially takes your impact to another level altogether. So it's not like a soft skill or a nice to have skill. I just think it's a real skill. It's as important, or perhaps even more important than a hard skill at times. So yeah, love the fact that you'll be putting this into practice going ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is a very critical skill for all creators, for sure, for all marketers, for sure, and the importance will only increase in the coming decades. So I like to bet on things which are increasing in importance, or which are increasing in potential, right? This is storytelling is most definitely one of them, because attention spans are going to reduce. People's we'll be fighting for people's trust and attention, two things which will be which are in deficit, and which will keep on being in more and more scarce deficit. It will be more and more tough to gain attention and trust. So good story, like those who tell good stories will benefit from this trend, and yeah, we'll keep doing well. It will be very critical in the coming decades. for
Absolutely,
sure.
absolutely. So let's wrap this up, shall we?
Great. Yeah, let's do that. So before we go, do you want to tell the listeners about
Yeah, sure. So you can
like
go
where
to
they can find you?
pranavkale.com, have a look around, and tell me what you think of the website. You can also send me an email at pranavkale@pranavkale.com. That's PR. Did I just say pranavkale@pranavkale.com? No, sorry. It's pranav@pranavkale.com. It's PRANAV, Pranav, at pranavkale.com, which is PRANAVKALE.com. So I hope to get some critical feedback from you guys.
Great, and you can send in your stories as to how this episode has helped you too, I guess.
For sure. Thanks for doing this with me, Sham.
Yeah,
See you,
thanks
bye-bye.
again for having me, Pranav. See you. Bye.